Okay, so here we have a couple of endpoints that are going to allow us to register. And once we register and store in the database, we would like to remember that this is the current user that is logged in, and we're going to store that current user in the profiles object. Then in a subsequent query, we're going to ask the server to remember to retrieve the user that we had just added in there in the profile attribute. All right, so let's try this out on the client. On the client, we already had a couple of queries. Right, so notice that in the register, we had sent the register. There it is. Right, and later on in the profile screen, we are using the profile. Okay, so let's try this out. So let's head over to our register page. And let's try registering as someone else. So let's register as Poe. Okay, so we sent over the profile, the register. Register probably was successful. Notice that it came back with the server, probably even made it to the database. And the database, we were able to insert Poe, but something happened with the profile. Let's see the profile. What happened? Didn't quite work there. Profile, did we restart the server? I don't remember if I restarted the server. Let's restart the server and test again. The question, which one is that? Oh, HTTP session is available normally as a RESTful controller. So if you're RESTful controller, it's available. You don't need to do anything. But it's in the JavaX servlet HTTP session. All right, so let's try it out. Let's go back to let's see if we can refresh this profile. All right, so it did go out. It went to the profile. Notice what it's coming back. It's nothing, but it didn't error out. So it is coming back with something probably null because it doesn't have anything to give us back. There's no profile stored in there. So we do have communication between the client and the server. Well, let's try out now the register. So let's go back to register. Let's register as Let's register here. Let's register as Pi. So we were able to register, right? And the profile is coming back. It doesn't die, but let's step through the let's step on the server side to see what's going on. Let's put a breakpoint in here, right, in the register, and let's put a breakpoint here in the profile, and let's restart this on debug mode. And let's try registering again. Okay, so let's go back to the register screen. And let's register as Mo. Let's register. Okay, notice that we are on the server. Notice one thing, right? Notice that if I hover over the session, right, there will be a session ID. See that? That ID is what is used by the cookie, right? The cookie uses this session ID. It's the string that is actually sent over back to the client, and then the client is expected to provide the same exact cookie back, right? So that we can know if it's the same session. Right? Just remember the first couple of letters here: 0C54. Right. So let's continue. Later on, we're going to be hit with the profile. The profile now it's asking for the profile. Now let's hover over the session and let's take a look at the session ID. Notice that now it starts with a different session ID. It's 68A3. See that? It's not the same session ID. So as far as the server is concerned, right, this is not the same conversation. It's a completely different. It cannot distinguish that saying that it's the same user, right? The same client. And it's creating a brand new session because it says, well, it must be someone else, right? I'm going to try and establish another conversation. So the problem is as follows. There's a couple of things happening here. One of the things is that because why the session is changing. One of them is that fetch, right, on the client side, by default, fetch does not send cookies by default, right? If you want fetch to participate in a session, you need to turn on the feature to send these cookies over, right? To do that, we in each request, right, that you want to participate in a session, you have to say that you want to include credentials, right? Which basically is saying pass in cookies, right? So credentials we need to do include, right? So by default this is turned off. So let's do that for the register and the profile. Oops, let's stop the server for now. And we like to do that the same thing in the register. We like to turn on credentials for the register. So let's add it right here. So that's the first thing, right? The next thing is that when we establish credentials, right, the server is going to be a little more strict on who is it going to allow the URLs to come from, right? Once we turn on credentials, the server is going to say, hey, I'm not just going to allow any domain to try and log in here, right? We need to be a little more strict. So here we need to now specify the exact domains from which we are going to allow in here, right? So in this particular case, all the URLs, all the requests are coming from 3000. So let's copy that and let's paste that. So it's coming from localhost 3000, right? Also, the server, the client is saying, hey, I want to use credentials. The server has to respond saying that it's okay to use these credentials, the features for credentials. So there is a configuration here that's called allow credentials. See that? So we need to turn that on, and this has to be equal to true, not the Boolean true, right? The string true. Okay, so let's save that, and let's restart the server. Okay, we have the server up and running. Let's head over to the client. Let's go to the register. Let's refresh this. And let's log in as Alice. Let's register. Let's see what came back from the profile. Okay, notice that that Alice came back. Notice that Alice was able to be registered. Right, it was added to the server, right, and the server is now sending back Alice. We just never displayed it here in the profile, but that's okay. The server's still running. It's still remembering Alice. Notice that if I refresh the profile, notice that we're always fetching the profile and we're always getting Alice, right? Notice that the server is remembering that we're still in the same cookie, right? And there's stuff in the attribute in that session, right? So we could in the client, right, in our profile screen, render the current user, right, and we can say hi, right, and we can have this dot state dot profile dot username, right. So notice there it is. It's hi Alice, right. And that information, notice that it's not state that we're maintaining here on the client. We're not using Redux. We're not storing it in any variable, right? It's entirely fetched from the server. The server is coming back with that profile information. We're just copying that, right? We're just copying that on our local state to then populate our user interface, right? So now in any page that you're in now, even in the home page or anywhere, you can always retrieve this profile and check whether it's null or not null. And if it's not null, you know that somebody is logged in, and you can drive logic in your user interface to display one thing or another, based on who's logged in, right? And maybe they have roles, and depending on their roles, you turn on certain things and you turn off certain things, right? But now you can have login and session-driven logic on your client based on things that are being remembered on the server, not on the client.